Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. Podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. Before I introduce my guest, just to remind everybody, I do have a YouTube channel. Just look for Tyson E. Franklin, Podiatry Business Coach. The ending part sort of changes every now and then. But another thing I just want to let everybody know, at the moment, I'm doing 30 videos in 30 days. And I did this last year, which worked really well. And this year, I'm basing all my questions off of in the Podiatry Business Owners Club. When people join on Facebook, I usually ask them, share a frustration with me. And so I'm basing my 30 videos on the frustrations that podiatrists are sharing with me. So it should be quite interesting over the next 30 days. So go over to YouTube and go and check that out. Just look for Tyson E. Franklin. Now, on to my amazing guest today from the UK. I have Emily Ball. Now, normally I don't read the whole bio because I like to just dive straight in. But I'm going to read the bio this time because it's very important to the story we're about to unfold. So Emily Ball is the founder of Active Step Foot and Ankle Clinic in Hampshire, UK, which she started in 2013 and has built into a leading practice where she no longer sees a caseload, which is pretty awesome, and is purely focused on vision, strategy, and team development. She was shortlisted as a finalist in the 2001 Great British Entrepreneur Awards, which is great, for pivoting her practice during COVID and diversifying, what sort of word is that? Diversifying revenue streams, which she describes as building practice resilience. She then launched a clubhouse coaching group, which I was on there one time, under the same name, to support practice owners. But this is the important part. Following a shock diagnosis of leukemia in her 3-year-old in November 2021, Emily was forced to step away completely from her practice and experience the devastating impact of the absence of leadership in her business. So we are going to talk a lot about practice resilience, or building a resilient practice. So Emily, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And yes, if anyone's listening, there was a longer intro than I normally do, but I thought unfolding that first will still give people an idea of, holy crap, you've gone through some stuff. And so before we dive into that, what got you into podiatry?
Well, it wasn't my initial choice. I think a lot of people can say that about podiatry. Didn't even know what a podiatrist was actually when I was doing my A-levels. So I initially embarked on a degree in psychology.
Okay. I was
always interested in human behaviour. Did that for a year and really thought, no, this isn't for me. I dropped out. I actually dropped out of my first degree choice. I'd finished that year, and then I fell into recruitment, which I did for a few years, and then realised actually I did want to do a caring profession, and I was a big netball player at the time. I used to play South Region sort of 5 times a week, county level, that sort of stuff. Had every injury under the sun, lower limb generally, sort of foot, ankle, shins. And I had a couple of mates that I'd have been at college with that had actually gone into podiatry, and they said to me, have you ever thought about becoming a sports podiatrist? And I said, that sounds really cool, tell me about it. So I shadowed them and looked into it. And the next thing I knew, I was enrolled on the degree program at Southampton University at the age of 23.
Okay, so you started a little bit later.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I'm always interested how people came into podiatry, because even my own exposure, I didn't really know what a podiatrist was until a friend of mine that I went through school with had started the year before me. Yeah, he finished, but we went through from grade 1 to grade 12 together. He went off and did something, and I decided to repeat grade 12 because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then when I was filling my choices, he said he was doing podiatry. Sounds interesting. And it was because he said, because your art background, you'd be good at making orthotics. That's what got me into it. So it's very interesting. So from the day of starting it, did you know that, yep, this is exactly what I want to do?
Absolutely. I mean, while I was doing the degree, I got work experience in a running store. I had a real interest in running footwear. So I did that throughout the whole of my degree. And I started sort of shadowing other podiatrists that were also doing sports podiatry. So I was really focused on going into that area. So yeah, through the degree, I was absolutely laser focused on eventually becoming an MSK pod which I did. My first post out of uni was working for Virgin Care as a Band 6 MSK pod. Boom.
What's Virgin Care?
It's a private healthcare provider in the UK that bought up a load of NHS contracts, and they had the MSK contract in Hampshire at the time, so I joined them.
It's not related to Richard Branson in any way.
Yeah,
it is. It is, because as soon as you hear Virgin, you just know Richard's got his hands all over that.
Yes.
I watched a movie probably about 20 years ago called The Filth and the Fury. I don't know if you've seen it or great. It's like a documentary sort of type movie, and it was all about the Sex Pistols, and it was the rise of the Sex Pistols. That's why it's called The Filth and the Fury. But it was surprising that the Sex Pistols was where Richard Branson made his money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When you watch that documentary, it's like he had a record business that wasn't going that great. Then all of a sudden he came across the Sex Pistols, who were really controversial. And he just went, oh, yeah, I can see something here. And that was sort of like the kickstart that he needed. So it's
interesting. A bit like Richard Branson, I think I was always going to work for myself. So I think the first thing I wanted to do when I got out of uni was just get experience.
Yeah.
But within 18 months, I was already practicing privately. And that was the next goal, was to actually start a practice of my own. So I never actually did work for the NHS, which is the most common route that people go into.
I know. And I think I think that's really interesting, though, that you had goals when you're a student, that this is what I want to do when I get out. And I think that's really important for students now listening to this, new graduates, that if you've got a goal going into podiatry, just make sure you maintain that goal when you graduate. Your first job may or may not be the dream job that you wanted. Don't lose sight of why you did podiatry, what you like about podiatry. And if your first job sucks, I don't believe in breaking contracts. Put up with it. You're the one that signed it. You should have known better. But if you've got passion for MSK work, then keep doing study in that area. And as soon as you can jump ship to a better job, then jump ship. But don't lose sight and don't lose the skills that you've developed. Just keep working on them.
Sure. And you've got to say yes to every opportunity that comes along. And I was really lucky, I managed to work quite early on in my career with professional sports teams and elite athletes. And I was always hanging out in those circles as well. And I had this very opportune call from the girl that I'd worked with at the running store, interestingly, when I'd graduated. And she ended up becoming the manager of the Sweatshop running store, which was a new store that had opened in Southampton. And she said, look, we've got a room above the shop, we're trying to rent it out to a health professional. And the guy that owns the sweatshop is going to be coming down next week. Do you want to have a chat with him? So I said, yeah, sure. I was interested in starting up. So I went down there, and I had this real opportune meeting with a guy called Hugh Brasher, who I don't know if you've heard of Brasher, the Brashers, no. Chris Brasher, his dad, was the first guy he paced Sir Roger Bannister to the first sub 4-minute mile. So famous in the world. And Chris was, he owned the whole chain of sweatshops, and he's now the London Marathon director. So I found myself in a room with him, alongside another guy that owns the running school, which is quite a big company in the UK as well. And all of a sudden, I was renting a room and working with these key people, which then introduced me to more elite athletes and things. So one of the messages that that I would give any new grads coming out is just be in the arena. Say yes to everything. Hang out with people that are doing it, and you'll make connections. It says on your wall, doesn't it? The next connection you make may be the one that changes your life, and it's absolutely
definitely
true.
Yeah, definitely 100%. I was talking to someone only yesterday, and I have this thing. I love introducing people. Yeah, if I know someone here and someone there, I love putting them together and see what happens. And somebody asked me, why do you do that? And I go, well, it's fun. Well, it's fun connecting people, but it's one of those things that in my bio, it always says that I won't find the cure for cancer, but one day I hope I inspire someone who inspires someone who does, because I know I'm not smart enough to find the cure, but I never know the connections that I make with people and what impact that has on them, who they may touch. And one day you're just a small little cog in the whole thing. Well, just going to go back a step too, that when you were studying, you got a job working like in a sports store, which I think is another really key factor for people that are studying. There's so many shoe stores, there's so many sports places out there. If you're looking for part-time work, ideally, they're the sort of places you should be working. I worked on a chicken farm, didn't learn a lot about chickens, didn't teach me much about podiatry.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about working in the running store, apart from the massive discounts that I used to get, was the fact that I was literally watching people walk and run every day.
Yeah.
You know, I was working there. I was at university full time, but it was actually 3 full days a week. So I was working the other 4 days part time in the running store. I had a young child, my son at the time as well. He was very young, so I had to work. But I was literally learning about footwear and watching people move, which was so important, you know, to building that experience when I started doing gait analysis when I graduated.
But the other thing you said too about just putting yourself in the right position to sort of win. It's like being in the arena. The champions don't come from the stands. The champions come from the people that are the gladiators that are in the arena, who are actually going to battle, that are in there actually putting themselves. Yeah, podiatrists don't put themselves in danger like gladiators used to do. But unless you're in the arena, then you don't stand a chance. So I think people have got to just, I know, they've got to try and make their own opportunities. If there's something they really want to do, they've got to put themselves in that position.
Sure, absolutely.
So you started your first practice. I love the name, the sweatshop. It's just these days. I own a sweatshop. People go, oh, okay. So you started up there. How long did you stay there before you moved out to something else?
Years. I was doing a bit of associate work, like most of us do as well, for a guy in the local town. So I was doing above the sweatshop, working with the running school, the physio, and also the guys in the running store. And I was also renting a space in my local village. So I was actually sort of spreading myself quite thin at the time, just again seizing the opportunities that came along. But I eventually decided just to consolidate everything into my local village, which was Whiteley, which is where we are now, actually. And that was in 2013. And I moved from sort of being a sole trader to a limited company at that point, which, you know, I suppose I viewed at the time as becoming a proper business, with the intention of employing people and growing a team. And that was as a consequence of actually having my second child. I just couldn't be everywhere anymore. You know, I was literally working 6 days a week, flat out, probably about 60 hours, in multiple locations, including going to London and seeing elite athletes in a place called Teddington, with this physio that I'd met. So it just wasn't sustainable. And I'd also picked up a professional football club at Exeter City, which I was traveling to and from, which was about 3.5 hour journey each way.
Oh, geez.
And so heavily pregnant, I had a chaperone with me coming down to make sure I didn't give birth in the car, you know, still seeing football players right up until I had to stop. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But reality struck at the time that, you know, if I was going to carry on, I had to keep it local and, you know, look after the kids as well as run the business.
So what you did, so you ended up just consolidating it down to your local area?
Yeah, and I think the thing that shocked me the most was that people that I'd been seeing all over the place actually came to my little village of Whiteley to see me.
Yeah.
Because of the reputation and the trust that they built in me. They travelled, and even probably 8 years on, there's still people that will come down from London to see us in our practice because they've got that relationship with me, which is incredible, really.
Well, like people will travel if they know that the service is exceptional. Yeah. They will go out of their way if they know that where they're going to go, they're not going to get that sort of treatment or that service anyway. And even though some podiatrists might say, oh, yeah, but I could probably provide exactly the same service, but they don't know you. So I think once they build up that know, like, and trust, they will travel.
I mean, you know that I do coaching now. I've been doing that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I see in some of my clients is they're trying to juggle some of these multiple locations. Some of them do it really well, and others really, really do struggle. They're still kind of traveling, you know, like I did, across all of them. But I suppose what I did was out of necessity, and it paid off. But trying to explain that actually it will be okay, you know, you can consolidate, and it'll probably be okay, is really hard when you're in that place. But when necessity forces that decision, like it did with me when I, you know, had another baby, you just got to make good and make the best of it.
Yeah, I did exactly the same thing in North Queensland when I first moved up here. I'd had a hand injury, so I hadn't worked for 2 years. So when I came up here, I was planning just to chill out for 12 months and not do anything. I had to see a general practitioner to get a referral to see this dermatologist. And when he saw what I did, he said, "Oh, I don't suppose you want to work one afternoon from from our clinic here." I went, "Oh, yeah, okay." And I had instruments, so we got everything sterilized. So I just did that one afternoon a week, and my hands coped. I thought, okay, this is not too bad. Next thing, I was doing like 16 different locations within like a 2-hour drive of cancer all over the place. And at the time, it was fun. I was working from home. It was really easy. But then all of a sudden you realized, although I didn't really have a business, I had 16 part-time jobs.
Sure.
So I slowly consolidated them all down until eventually I just had one clinic. And I think a lot of podiatrists think they actually have a business when they have 5 part-time jobs.
I did.
Yeah.
You know, I'd created myself a very busy job, and the harsh reality hit when I went on maternity leave and didn't earn any money.
Well, that's a different. I remember someone at a conference once, and a guy actually said, "If you go away on holidays and you do not make any money for that week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, then you don't have a business. You just have a job." In fact, you don't even have a job because you get paid holiday pay when you're working with somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. I knew I had to build a team. I knew, you know, at that very point, one of my mates from uni came out and helped out while I was on maternity leave. So, you know, there was a little bit of money trickling in, but it certainly wasn't enough to pay me a proper wage while I was off. And I found myself having to go back to work pretty swiftly, you know, within 3 months, essentially, just to sort of get the money coming back. And there were patients that would wait for me as well. They didn't want to see the locum, and they would hold out. Or when she's back from maternity, I'll go and see Emily again.
Yeah. Did you do any general work at all? Did you do any routine care, or was it just MSK?
Yeah. So in the private practice, you know, I did everything.
Oh, okay.
In the satellite clinics, it was mainly MSK.
Yeah.
But yes, certainly, you know, in the practice I was trying to build locally, it was everything: general care, MSK, surgeries, etc. So I knew I needed to recruit, and I knew I needed to try and build a business, and that was there was a bit of a turning point for me. I'd had managed to recruit a part-time graduate, my first ever proper recruit. Hadn't recruited, bearing in mind my background had been in recruitment and I should be excellent at it. My first recruit was not a good recruit. It was, you know, a failure on my part. I hadn't selected somebody that was aligned to, you know, my business and my vision. They were very much you know, looking at their vision and what they wanted to get out of the situation with me.
And you've got to have similar values as well, or you're just going to bang heads.
I recruited out of desperation. You know, I had a baby essentially, and I needed an extra pair of hands. And the first person that came along, I took on.
So is this recruiting another podiatrist or a podiatrist?
Another podiatrist. And I was still doing all the admin, you know, as we do at the beginning myself, as well as trying to see patients and look after this new person that I'd taken on. And I remember at the time I'd decided to invest in a shockwave machine. I wanted to do something that was more advanced than just you know, gait analysis and MSK assessment. And I was starting to learn more about rehabilitation as well. So I'd invested in the shockwave machine and got quite friendly with the guy, Chris Downton, his name is, from EMS. And he'd invited me to conference. And the funny thing was, you know, I couldn't go to conference because I had the baby.
Yeah.
And he said, "Look, bring the baby."
Oh, geez, okay, brave man.
I know, and at the time I was pretty skint, Tyson. You know, I was desperately trying to make ends meet, and he was offering to pay me to go on the stand with him to promote Shockwave to podiatry, which, was relatively new at the time. You know, I think I was the first one in the UK to buy a shockwave machine. And so he was quite keen to really kind of enter into that market. So he was like, bring the baby. And I remember being on the stand with him, literally holding a 7-month-old Clara, chatting to delegates at the Royal College of Podiatry about shockwave, fielding phone calls from my new graduate, and everything was going wrong and she was going to cancel the caseload that day. And I just thought, I need help. What am I going to do? And that's when I discovered, you mentioned them earlier, we spoke earlier, but I decided to invest in coaching for myself, business coaching. And that was 2015 at the time. And that's when I started getting business coaching for myself, and I saw them across the room, and I signed up there and then didn't even know what it cost. I just thought, whatever it costs, it's going to be worth it because I need it.
It's so funny because
it's a massive leap of faith.
I think what happens too is usually sometimes our first person we employ will be a new graduate. And since you haven't been out a long time yourself, you just assume they know what they're doing. And you just throw the new graduate in the deep end. And a lot of the times they just drown because they need that guidance. And I think that's part of the mistakes that we make. But what you said about business coaching, the amount of podiatrists that I've done coaching with over the years, and and the amount of people I've had who have contacted me said, I'm thinking about getting a business coach. And I usually say, don't think about it, just do it. Because it'll be the best thing that you've ever done. And when you take someone's practice from where they are and you can triple the turnover in a certain period of time, and they're coming back to you, go, I'm so glad that I did coaching. And I look at the people that are still sitting on the fence, go, oh, yeah, look, I don't know if I can afford it. And then 12 months later, the business hasn't changed. And you go, it's costing you money. And I did the same thing. I had a business coach. So, and even people that I still work with, I know business coaches that are like the top of the game, in different fields, other professions. And the funny part, they have a business coach themselves. Even the coaches have a coach.
Yeah.
Anthony Robbins would have someone he talks to. What was that?
Never trust a coach that doesn't have a coach.
Yeah, because every coach has somebody that they talk to and they run ideas past. And it could be someone who's at the same level as them, but they still need. How many times have you seen a TV show where you'll see the psychiatrist with patients, and then later on that psychiatrist is with a psychiatrist getting their own therapy because you've got to work through things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I mean, at the time, I knew if I carried on doing the same things, I was going to get the same results. And it's so true. So something had to change, and I was going to find the money. However I was going to do that, I was going to find the money. And I made some significant shifts in that following 6 months as a result of that. And the group that I joined were pretty amazing. Like they say, you're the average of the people you hang out with.
Definitely.
I was hanging out with Hiran Patel, who I know has been on your podcast, who's a good friend of mine. Margaret Trevelyan, very successful practice, Dr. Bharti Rajput. These were my peer group all of a sudden. And we grew together as a result of being part of that original cohort in that coaching group. And we're still very tight now. So they're they're the people that I bounce off of now, as well as my own coach.
Yeah, well, I've got a because I do like one-on-one coaching, but I've also got a group coaching, and they're called the Podiatry Business Spartans. And they are such a fun group to be with. But surprisingly, there'll be certain people that are in that group for a period of time, and then they leave the group. They go, I just don't feel I'm getting what I need anymore. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's okay, because if you feel that group isn't serving you, then you should leave the group. You shouldn't stay part of that particular group. But then I look at the value that group all give each other. And I know there's certain ones in there that's going, I wouldn't leave because, and I think a lot of the times too, especially group coaching, is you've got to put in to get out. If you just sit back thinking, oh, I'm just going to take, eventually you'll leave because you're a taker, not a giver.
Yeah.
And it's got to work both ways.
Yeah, agreed.
So so you got involved with this coaching thing, all of a sudden I take it your attitude, your mindset, the way you looked at your practice, the way you recruited, that all slowly changed over a period of time?
Yeah, it did. It really did. And I think the first thing I saw was the revenue increase. You know, I made some significant changes to my pricing structure, started charging my value. You know, I know that's a big step for a lot of people at the beginning. I did it straight away. I was fearless about it because I had to, you know, I just, whatever they threw at me at the coaching group, I just went, yeah, I'll do it. So I made some really, you know, quite quick changes. I also got to work.
Well, how long into joining the coaching group or taking on coaching did you notice the change in revenue? Was it immediate, or what did you notice?
Within 3 months, it was like triple.
Yeah.
It was that. Yeah, I thought I was doing really well. I mean, I don't mind talking numbers. You know, I was originally billing about 6K a month, and I thought that was brilliant. And I thought I would be on top of the world if I could bill 10.
Yeah.
So 10 was the magic number back then. And you know, before long I was billing 15, you know, so it really did make a big shift very quickly. And that meant that I could invest in more specialist equipment, and grow my team, you know, get more tech. I took on a lease as well, so I wasn't renting a room anymore, which gave the business more security. And I took on admin, so I was able to actually really, you know, create solid foundations for the business moving forward, which I couldn't do when I was just billing enough to cover my expenses and pay myself a wage.
It's like a false economy, isn't it? That was the first video at the beginning. I said I'm doing 30 videos in 30 days. The first video that I shot was why don't my patients respect me? And this is one of the frustrations that somebody said, my patients don't respect me. And they said they treat me like a hairdresser, or they treat me like a masseuse. So the video that I shot, I said, well, do you ever go to your general practitioner? Have you ever been to the dentist where they greet you, take you in, do the treatment, do the suction, do everything themselves, and then they bring you out, they take the money, and they make your next booking? Have you ever seen that at a dentist, orthopedic surgeon, any other medical practitioner? No. I said, where do you see it happen? Hairdresser, masseuse, nail salon. I said, so if you don't have a receptionist, don't have an admin team, and you're doing everything yourself, then expect they're going to view you the same way, especially if you're doing a lot of routine care and not MSK work.
Sure. It's funny, one of the changes that we made was we moved out of wearing tunics and put on scrubs. And again, that change of perception to looking more like a surgeon or a doctor.
Yeah.
You know, and the team felt better as well. The team felt great, and they love the scrubs now, actually, and that's like several years on. But just little changes like that. But yeah, certainly having people meet and greet, and you being the consultant and the expert in the room, just that perception speaks volumes.
It's the whole image, and that's the part when somebody works with someone for a couple of years, and they may not have worked at the best practice. And then they go and set up their own business, and then they try and do it on the cheap because they want to save money. I actually think a lot of people probably open up their practice 12 months earlier than what they should. They should wait another 12 months because cash flow is king. And the reason they do everything on the cheap is because they don't have enough money to do it properly. Whereas if they waited 12 months, maybe 2 years, it's not a long time, have the cash behind you, you will set up a far better business.
Yeah, definitely.
When when I had my clinic in Cairns, when we set up in Mackay in 2002, we did, I think in the first 12 months, and this is like, so this is 20 years ago, we turned over 402,000 in the first 12 months, just by knowing what we did previously in the other clinic, and then just taking that and making it work. Plus, we had cash flow to do it. We put money in the bank, and we just drove that business the right way.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in you know, obviously it takes time. You learn through your mistakes initially, but we talked about coaching earlier, and actually just investing in coaching, you just make less mistakes and move forward quicker.
Well, I was at a conference once.
Benefit of experience around you.
I was at a conference once, and there was a guy there who had like 18 practices, and we were talking about something, and I said, "What do you do in this situation?" And he went, "Oh, I do this, this, and this." And I went, "Can I give you one tip?" And he said, "What?" And I said, "Do this." And I told him what to do. And he went, "Holy shit." He said, "That is going to add about $50,000 a year to my revenue, just that one little change." And I said, "I know." I said, "Just do it." I said, because we're friends, I'll just give you that one for free. And but it's surprising when you look at something, especially if they've had a business that's been there for a while and they've got a decent database, the amount of money that is in that database that they don't realize is phenomenal when they know how to tap into it the right way. So let's get back on your story. So all of a sudden you've got involved in coaching, your business has started to grow.
Yeah.
But then you had a bit of a setback with one of your children.
Yeah, horrific. I mean, so from starting coaching in 2015, and then obviously we had the turbulent time of COVID as well. Having got through that.
Bloody COVID,
well.
yeah. They're going to get a T-shirt done of it just says bloody COVID.
We weathered it pretty well. You mentioned earlier, I got shortlisted for the Great British Entrepreneur Award, because of pivoting. So we weathered it really well and built resilience and grew during that time. So came out the other side stronger with a great team. And I'd largely stepped away from seeing patients at that point. I was very much in a strategic position. I was mentoring my guys and developing the team, which was exactly where I wanted to be, and just seeing a handful of patients a month and supporting them. So I was really happy. I'd built this business that I'd always dreamed of having, where I wasn't working 60 hours a week across multiple locations, and I was developing some amazing people and taking a decent salary, which that's a practice owner's dream, right?
Yeah.
And then the first part of the story is it was around October, and we all got COVID. We actually all got COVID in the household, and we had to go through the period of isolation, so I couldn't attend clinic at all, and all of my children were at home with me, which was hideous. And and then after that period of
how many children do you have?
I've got 3.
Oh, okay.
I've got a 17-year-old. He was the one that I was 10 months old when I went back to uni.
Yeah.
And he's now 17. And I've got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old as well, Clara and Martha. So we all had COVID. After isolation, went back to school and nursery, college, etc. And I got a phone call from the nursery that afternoon saying, we're a bit worried about Martha. She's looking quite swollen around the neck and face, and she's walking funny. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound good. And I think as health professionals, we're a bit in tune with what's not right. Yeah. So I took her straight to hospital. I just took her to A&E. And they said, look, we think she's got, a post-viral sort of flare from COVID. It's not uncommon. We're seeing it more in kids, but we don't really know what it is, but it should go in a few weeks. So I went home. About a week later, I wasn't happy. Took her to see a private GP that I knew, and he said the same thing. That she looks like she's having this sort of post-viral thing, but she seems well in herself. If it gets worse, bring her back. I then attended conference in November, which many people would have seen me at, and she was still unwell, but she didn't seem to be getting any worse, and I'd been told it would take a few weeks for the swelling to go down. I got back from conference, and she just really deteriorated. She was quite fatigued, getting pain at night, which was quite scary. So I took her back to the GP straight away. Again, they thought it was an infection, sent me away. And the next day I just said, I want to see someone else. And that doctor sent me to A&E, and 2 hours later, she was diagnosed with leukemia.
What's it like as a parent, hearing that? Like I've got 3 children as well, a bit older, and we hear this happening to other people. As a parent, I can't imagine what that diagnosis would be like, to be told that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I knew she was unwell, and when I got to A&E, their faces said it all, really. They had a room waiting and a consultant stood by the bed, and my instincts were telling me it was cancer.
Yeah.
They diagnosed it very quickly, obviously. My immediate feelings were, what are we going to do about it? That's it.
Yeah.
How are we going to deal with this? And I think
I suppose,
I've been in practice before as well. We've shit's hit the fan. what are we going to do about it? We haven't got a choice. We can't fail. So what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. And also hearing that too, at least you've got a diagnosis. You're not sitting back now wondering what's going on. At least you know now what's happening, and then you can start dealing with it.
Exactly. And then you realise that there's different forms of leukemia, some worse than others. There's high responders, low responders. So we went through this roller coaster of a few weeks trying to determine which type it was and what her prognosis was. And I'm very pleased to say that, first of all, she has a very high prognosis of 90%.
Oh, that's great.
She has the most common form of leukemia, and she is a high responder. So
when she's 21, she's telling this story. You can say, you just had one of those common cancers. Nothing to rave about.
And she's a trooper. Chemo is brutal, but kids are more resilient than we are.
How's she going? How is it? How's it going?
I've just taken her on holiday for a week to one of those caravan parks with all the activities. Not my idea of fun, but we can't go any more than an hour away from the hospital. Yeah. She had a great time. She's on the roller coasters at 4 years old, and she's fearless. She's absolutely fearless. And so she's living a life of joy with cancer, and she should start school in less than 2 weeks.
And the good part, there's no good part in this, but the positivity out of this is, because you've set up a business that can run without you, you have the money to be able to do certain things, and you also have the time that you can spend with your child.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think. So here's the kicker.
Okay. Yes.
I thought I had set up a business.
Here we go. Yes.
That could run without me. I wasn't seeing patients. That could pay me in my absence. But having been wrenched from my business, which I still had input into, I actually saw a massive decline in revenue during October and November. So I was literally off from when we had COVID, diagnosed 27th of November, and December again was dire. So over that 3 months, we had a devastating effect on our turnover. So to put it into perspective, I only had 2 months of business savings left. We were in negative cash flow over that 3 months. Our patient numbers dropped significantly, and we were operating in negative profit, essentially, because we were using our business savings, and I wasn't in a position to pay myself at all.
Are you saying that, like, when you went off, they've got that saying, well, the cat's away, the mice will play. Did the mice play, or you just ran out of cash? What caused the decline?
The team were doing everything they could. They were in a state of chaos, fear and uncertainty about what was going to happen with me.
Yeah.
And it became very apparent to me that actually the absence of leadership was the problem.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was the thing that shocked me the most, is I'd invested 6 years in business coaching and built this amazing practice, but what I hadn't done was build leadership capability within my team.
And that's an important part, because there's business coaching, which, yes, you can coach someone to have a great business, but leadership is a totally different thing. And when COVID first hit, I was actually working more in the dental space, doing a lot of coaching with dentists, and also doing leadership stuff with them. And that was one of the biggest things that we were saying to everybody at the time. Right now, you need to show leadership. If you show fear, doubt, uncertainty on what's actually happening, everyone's going to start jumping ship. They will go and find other jobs that are going to be more secure. You can't, and that will affect your business. And people who showed leadership during COVID came out the other end looking, smelling sweet, actually made more money through that whole period. And those that didn't show leadership, I mean, they really struggled. And a few, almost closed up.
I think what I realised very quickly is that my team respected me as a leader. They understood the decisions that I'd made, especially during the COVID period. I'd looked after the team. I'd made sure that we were in a strong position. and we all benefited from that on the other side, and still are. But what I'd done is I'd created this huge amount of dependency on me when it came to strategic decision making. So, you know, they always looked to me for the answers. And obviously when I was forced to step away and not have that same level of input into that, you know, into decision making on a day, you know, the day-to-day operational stuff, that the team started to show cracks and fall apart. And that wasn't because they weren't working hard. They were still doing a great job. They just didn't have the strategic direction that I would give them normally. So the plate stopped spinning. Yeah.
Were they always looking for you? So you were like the plate spinner at the circus. Yeah. You'd spin the plate here, spin, and have to go over here and spin this plate. So they were so used to not making decisions themselves or not knowing.
Yeah, I was setting the direction. You know, and I would do that at the weekly one-to-ones, at the monthly meeting, at the quarterly meetings that we would have. We had some, you know, really great rhythm in our business. So there was a lot of communication around what we needed to do. You know, the team were always very clear on what the focus was at any one point in time. And that's what's always made us so successful. But take that away, then you have people in a state of storming, essentially. You might have heard of norming and storming. You know, we'd gone from this period of tranquility where everyone knows what their role is, what their you know, their point of focus is at that point in time, to not knowing what their role is in the bigger picture, and not knowing what their particular focus is at that time. So they're trying to do their best in lots of different areas. And the net result was that things were just very slowly declining. I say slowly, over 3 months.
That's what I mean. It's
which, you know,
things can go downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah, you may not notice it on a day-to-day basis, but when you start looking at the weekly and monthly stats, and we're quite hot on our figures in my practice, you start
got to know your numbers.
You start seeing those trends developing, and it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot to start dipping below the profit line. So that's what happened, which was pretty scary stuff. So I knew I needed to do something. It was that same feeling that I had when I was stood there holding the baby at the conference back in 2015, when I knew I needed business coaching. I knew I needed to develop leadership capability within my team. And I had 2 very willing team members. I had Sophie, who is our operations manager now, and I had Alice, Alice, who is our clinical director now. And they were both keen to step up and take on those roles. The problem was I didn't have the capacity, because I was caring full time and living at the hospital, to be able to mentor, coach them to become better leaders. So I engaged external consultancy. Yeah.
So I will mention it because your partner, Paul, teaches leadership.
He does, which is an absolute bonus.
Which he is going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to get him on, and we're going to talk about leadership, because I think it's very interesting what he helped you do. I think it's really important for a lot of podiatrists you can be a podiatrist, you can be a business owner, but being a leader is a different level again that you need to learn and understand.
Level. It is, absolutely. I mean, you know, I met Paul when I was doing Clubhouse, actually. So the Clubhouse that you were on, he was on as well.
Yeah.
And I originally set up that Clubhouse group because I wanted to, you know, help other practice leaders become, you know, build more resilient practices. So every week we would pick a topic or a theme, and I would cultivate a group of expert speakers, of which you were one. And Paul was recommended to me as an expert speaker on the topic of, you know, having purpose within your practice.
Yeah.
And he was really good, so I invited him back a few times and actually booked him to do some work for my practice. And needless to say, we, you know, became friends and found a lot of commonality in it, and actually ended up, you know, being in a relationship together.
We won't get into the nitty gritty.
Yes.
I can ask Paul that when he comes on and say, "Hey, Paul, so you had to pick Emily up." Anyway, so I can't let you know my secrets.
So yeah, I mean, that was, you know, maybe you could say the universe, you know, threw us together for a reason, because obviously the thing that I needed, you know, when you know the real shit hit the fan was leadership development, and that's what Paul does. So 6 weeks into our new relationship, my daughter gets diagnosed with cancer, and Paul says, what can I do to help? And I said, I need you to help me develop my leaders. So together we have done that, and he stepped in at the time when I couldn't, and put my guys through a series of sort of action set learning sessions, where they brought real life challenges that they were experiencing literally on a day-to-day basis. And he helped them, learn the theory and application of certain leadership tools and models, and work through those challenges. And that really accelerated their learning.
Yeah.
And very quickly, with the following quarter, we had turned things around. That's how quickly that he was able to support them in instigating change in the practice. 3 months of decline, 3 months to rebuild, which is quite incredible.
And I think the thing with leadership too, some people might think, oh no, I am a born leader. I was captain of the basketball team, captain of the football team. But yes, just because you may have confidence in yourself to lead that type of sports team based on your ability, I think leadership in a business is different, because when you're dealing with different personalities, like on a football team, everyone's playing football. Everybody wants to win the game. You're all part of a club and part of a team. It's like a mini cult. But in a business, when you've got different personalities, different genders, different roles in the business, that type of leadership is a skill that I think needs to be learnt over a period of time.
Sure, it's an excellent point. I was talking about it earlier. I'm actually writing a book at the moment about all the experiences that I'm sharing with you. And
when's that coming out? Have you written it yet?
Yeah, Christmas actually.
Christmas.
Yeah, so the first draft should be done by the end of September, and then we'll be moved to second draft, and then
what's the title? What's the title of the book?
But you can't guess. It's Practice Resilience.
Oh, I was going to guess that. Damn it! You didn't give me a chance.
Yeah, it's called Practice Resilience. But one of the questions that my book coach asked me today was, what are the common things that new leaders do? When they're trying to become leaders. And the first thing they do is they emulate role models, good and bad. And the second thing they do is they try and be the leader they think they should be. So they role play, which again can be dangerous. And I think society tells us that leaders are strong and they make good decisions and they don't change their minds and they've got all the answers. And actually that's not true. Good leaders are generally vulnerable and they're willing to put their hands up when they've made mistakes, and they ask a lot of questions and they don't always have the answers.
That's really good. They don't always have that's the thing. I think the thing I've noticed with good leaders and people that I know are just fantastic at what they do as leaders, probably ask more questions than anybody else, because they know when they don't know something, so they need to ask the question so they can get the information. Whereas people that are not good leaders just assume they know, and they make a lot of mistakes, and some of those mistakes can be costly.
Sure, and they're also excellent at identifying the strengths of each person in their team and leaning into those, rather than trying to be omnipotent, the person that knows everything and can do everything. And I think that's what me and Paul tried to do, and it worked. We tried to create intentional leaders. So we got Alice and Sophie actually taking ownership of their domains in the business and actually bringing the plans and solutions back to me, as opposed to asking me for the answers. And that's what we've done going forward. You've probably heard of that theory, and David Marquette's Turn the Ship Around. It's very it's very similar what we did with the team. We got them, the experts, the people that were on the ground, working in the thick of it on a day-to-day basis, actually bringing me the information and saying, right, this is what we need to do, and let them run with it.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't read that book, Turn the Ship Around, go and get a copy and have a read of it. Yeah, it's a good book.
And so that's what we've done. We've developed leadership capability, and we've also done an exercise of bringing the team back together. There's been so much turbulence with COVID, and then obviously me going off, that we did a team alignment day where we did a refresh of our vision and values. And the new vision is we're literally just about to move into a brand new clinic as well. So
oh, good.
There's a new building that we'll eventually own, 7 treatment rooms, gait and rehab suite. This was the dream clinic that I imagined at the very beginning, and that is, we should move into that in November. So we've kind of come through this crisis, recovered, and now we're moving towards this this dream practice, which actually my team have designed. So whereas in the past I'd have come with this ready-baked plan about what was going to happen.
Well, you've got their input, which is good.
Yeah, I've got their total input, and it's their clinic now. So there's total buy-in there and belief in what we're doing.
No, and I think what you said too about going back and looking at the visions and values. When I was doing the 12-week podiatry business reboot, the first session was all about this thing called the cultural telescope, and it was about their values and their visions, and going through that. Yeah, people want to know stories, and they would need to see where the business is actually going, but everybody needs to be aligned with what they're actually doing, and just let people know I am going to do another 12-week reboot. I wasn't going to do any more of them, but I keep getting people asking about it, so I'm going to do another one in 2023. I'm just going to do one a year, just one 12-week reboot per year. So it's going to be February 2023. So I'll put some details on my website soon. So if people want to reach out to you, Emily, and ask you any questions or find out more about your book or other stuff that you're doing, what's the best way of getting hold of you?
Sure. So I just launched my new business, which is Leading Practice, and that's a joint initiative with Paul Kincaid, my partner, my business partner and life partner. The purpose of that is to deliver leadership development to private practice owners, and try and bridge that gap between them building great practices and actually being able to step away from them. So if you want to contact us about that, we've got a Facebook community called the Leading Practice Coaching Group.
Yep.
Where we put in lots of free content and tips. You can contact us on emily@leadingpractice.co.uk as well. And we're literally just about to launch our leadership program, which is 4 2-day modules held quarterly over the next 12 months, which is going to be covering leadership development for your practice. And alongside that, we can support you with coaching and also practice-based workshops as well to sort of work with any specific issues that people are struggling with. So that's what we're doing. My book is coming out at Christmas, hopefully. That's the goal. And that's very much almost an autobiographical book about my experience of building my practice, building practice resilience, and then building leadership capabilities. So it sort of hits all 3 of those topics within the book. So the idea is that people can take my learnings and apply them to their own practices.
I look forward to reading it.
Good, I'll send you a copy.
Just send me. I want a signed copy. Okay, so Emily, I want to thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing part of your story and how it came together, how it unraveled, and then came back together again, which I think is fantastic. I hope your daughter keeps getting better and keep us up to date too on her progress as it goes through. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, bye.